And also, of course, the irony there is that natural gas has a relatively low carbon footprint. In fact, like that's why in the U.S. its emissions, or at least per unit of GDP, dropped pretty rapidly just when with the fracking boom and everything, and natural gas got so cheap.
Sure, the U.S. has led the world in emissions reductions by far in absolute terms. Now, in percentage terms, you might get bigger reductions in Germany or somewhere else in Europe, but they put themselves in the ditch. The U.S. economy facing big, serious challenges ahead. Let me be clear. But we've reduced our emissions more than any other country in the world, and it's not even close in terms of absolute changes. And the biggest chunk of that reduction is due to natural gas displacing coal in the power sector. So the U.S., and I think it's important to realize too, that now in particular, and in the wake of the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel, U.S. hydrocarbons, and in particular U.S. natural gas, are much more strategic in a geopolitical sense than they were before. 2/3 of the U.S. LNG exports go to Europe. So Europe needs American gas. They need it badly. And so the U.S. Upstream sector, the U.S. oil and gas sector, is a geostrategic asset, and it is being undermined and, in fact, attacked routinely by these NGOs. And I can't say it any more plainly, that these are, in fact, a threat to our national security.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of that, I appreciate the conference, too. Unless I misread it, it seemed like you were trying to be, not feed into China alarmism, but just to explain the deal there. So can you explain, I know there's a lot of people worried about, are we getting dependent on rare earths from China, things of that nature. Do you want to just speak in general about how does the relationship with China factor into these issues?
Sure. One of the other key issues that as we think about our energy future in the United States is, okay, well, what about the supply chains? And I'm adamantly pro-nuclear, and we talked about nuclear already, but Russia controls about 46 or 47% of the global enriched uranium market. So roughly 25% of the nuclear fuel now used in the U.S. in our nuclear fleet comes from Russia. Well, Russia's not our friend. That has become very obvious. China is not our friend either. And I'm not a China basher, but China has, over a period of decades, built up its internal mining, refining, and processing capacity on nearly all of the metals that are required for alternative energy. I don't call it renewable. I don't call it green. I don't call it clean. It's alternative because it's not green. It's not clean. It's not renewable. So wind turbines and electric vehicles, what do they require? They require neodymium iron boron magnets. These are high coercivity magnets, and they have to be doped with two rare earths, dysprosium and or terbium. China controls 90% of the global magnet market and 100% of the market for dysprosium and terbium. Why, in the name of Peter, Paul, and Mary, would the United States make its auto sector dependent on Chinese supply chains? And yet this is the stated goal of this administration. It's the stated goal of the Environmental Protection Agency, which in April proposed a rule that would require automakers in the U.S. to sell 2/3 of their vehicles by 2032 to be all electric. What are you doing? Why would you make our system dependent on Chinese supply chains? And if you want more proof of this, look at the Department of Commerce report that came out, I think it was in 2021, on these magnets, heavily redacted because of the importance of these magnets to their defense sector. So, the blindness with which we are stumbling into a series of strategic situations in which we are going to be dependent on countries that are not our friends. I mean, it's truly staggering what is happening with very little regard. And you don't read about it in the New York Times. You don't read about it in the Washington Post. And NPR is not going to cover it. Oh, it's just green, clean, blah, 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 with no understanding of what the potential ramifications are here.
So, Robert, here, I'm just confessing my ignorance on this. Why is China so, is it like they just happen to have the natural deposits of something? Or just like, could that reliance or near monopoly be broken up over time?
Well, so let's take the last one first. Yes, over time, the U.S. could build up its rare earth supplies, and rare earths that's a term of art, and they're not that rare. I mean, they're found in a lot of ore deposits, and so we could be in a stronger position, but we're not doing that. We're not mining them anymore. We're not processing them anymore. So it was in the 1990s when Deng Xiaoping made it very clear. He said, the Mideast has oil, we have rare earth elements, we're going to exploit them. And fully integrated rare earth sector from mining, processing, and fabrication. And so they have made this a a strategic choice with very strong government backing over decades to make their industry the dominant industry globally in these critical elements, as well as critical metals and minerals. So graphite, for instance, China announced they're going to restrain exports of graphite, which is key for batteries. They can have dominant positions in refining and processing of copper, molybdenum, lithium, and a dominant position in electric vehicles as well. Now, I don't give a fig about electric vehicles. I think it's a big waste of time and money. But nevertheless, they have made themselves into a dominant player in that sector. And the U.S. we're looking at this, and the Biden administration and others saying, oh, well, we should all be driving electric vehicles. Well, that's easy to say if you have unlimited amounts of money and you have another car and the rest of it. But the supply chain issue is the key one here. Why are we not talking about this? Why do you think Elon Musk is building the next Tesla factory in Shanghai? It's not a coincidence.
Hey, everybody, this is Bob Murphy. Thanks for listening to this clip from the Infi podcast. If you like what you heard and want to hear more, please consider subscribing and share this video with others. We've got new episodes dropping every Friday with more insightful discussions. Stay tuned.